Can you do it for a day? We all have things that we'd like to start, maybe habits that we'd like to form, or maybe habits that we'd like to stop. But sometimes when we're looking at those habits, things that we'd like to start or stop, we think, okay, so if I start, then I've got to be able to look at it and do it consistently. We've talked about that a lot in these videos. You know, what's the thing that you can do that you could start today that you could see yourself doing consistently going forward? If you're anything like me, maybe that word consistently is holding you back from doing something that you need to do on a daily basis or on a consistent basis to move yourself forward. But maybe that consistent word is holding you back, or there's something in your past that's keeping you from taking those steps forward. But there's this great question: can you do it for a day? And I believe the answer is yes. Whatever you're thinking about, it's amazing what we can do for a day. And that is my number one takeaway from Mark Batterson's new book, Win the Day. And I want to dive into some other top takeaways in today's video. So Mark Batterson is a pastor and author out of Washington, D.C. He's written a handful of books, a couple of which I've read, and I've really enjoyed his writing. So I was really excited to read this one. Here's a copy, Win the Day. The subtitle is 7 Habits to Help You Stress Less and Accomplish More. And he's got these 7 habits, and he's got these really great names for these different habits. He's got a habit called, fly the kite, and another one called seed the clouds, and another habit called flip the script. They just kind of make you want to read about them, right? They're like, oh, I wonder what that's about. He's got these cool ideas of the way that he's titled these habits. Now, those ones didn't make my list of my top takeaways, so you'll have to grab a copy of the book. There's really great habits in here that you can reference and come back to, and really awesome takeaways. But let's dive in, continue in on my top 3. So back to this first takeaway, that question of can you do it for a day? He talks in the introduction. It's not actually even one of the habits, but it's just in the introduction of the book where that question comes up. And he talks about this idea of living in something called day-type compartments. So basically you're compartmentalizing your life and you want to think just in the day and what's happening inside of a given day. You're not worrying about the past and you're not so focused on the future that you take away that power of the present. And then when you're trying to accomplish something, can you do it for a day? And when you break something down like that, generally the answer is yes. I can do this for a day. I love that concept. It breaks it down. It keeps it really simple. When you're trying to start something, don't necessarily have to look out and be like, well, I'm going to do this for the next 30 years of my life. You just need to be able to do it today. And then we'll wake up tomorrow morning and we'll tackle it again. You build these days on top of each other, building consistency, tackling it one day, one action step at a time. He talks about a quote that Margaret Thatcher said, where she talked about, look at a day where you feel supremely satisfied at the end of it. It's often not the days where you did nothing or it was very easy. It's the days where you accomplished what you set out to accomplish, where you had everything to do and you've done it. And that's when you sort of come away feeling supremely satisfied. And that's why that question of, can you do it for a day is so powerful, because when you look at the things that you're trying to accomplish, can you do it for one day? And the answer is yes, absolutely, I can do it for a day. Well, what about tomorrow? Well, let's deal with tomorrow when we get there, but let's do it today. Let's tackle the habit that you're trying to form, the writing that you'd like to be able to get done, or going to the gym. Can you do it for a day? Great, let's do it today, and then let's move into tomorrow and we'll tackle it then. We don't gain any hours by worrying about the past or the future, as it talks about in the Bible, right? So I love that. That's my number one takeaway, just sectioning down to, can I do it for a day? My second takeaway is his habit called eat the frog. And it comes from the quote from Mark Twain, or at least I think it's attributed to Mark Twain, where he says, if you have to eat a live frog, it's best to eat it first thing in the morning. And if you have to eat 2 live frogs, I'm not sure why this would ever happen, but it's best to eat the bigger one first. What's he talking about here? He's talking about tackle the big challenging thing, the biggest thing that sort of scares you, tackle that first. And I've been kind of working on this over the last number of months and years in my life. I tackle that most difficult task first. If I can make the most challenging phone call that I need to make, or the conversation that I don't really want to have, or the thing that I kind of keep putting off, if I can tackle that first, all of a sudden the rest of that to-do list, the other things that I want to be able to do during the day, just become that much easier. I've gained momentum, and that's what he's talking about in this chapter of Eat the Frog, is you want to gain momentum by completing some tasks. So he talks about, can you get up and complete a task right away by making your bed in the morning? I don't always get the opportunity to make my bed because I'm up before my wife and out the door, but I look at it and going, yeah, I do want to accomplish things, but I really like this idea of tackling that big thing first, the most challenging one on your list, the one that kind of scares you a little bit, or the one that's pushing you or pushing back against you. If you can get that taken care of, all of a sudden everything else that you need to tackle just becomes that much easier. Not perfect at this. I still make lots of mistakes. I still put off the difficult phone calls. That happens all the time, or the difficult conversations. But when I do step up and actually take that step, I notice my day becomes much more satisfying, because then everything else all of a sudden just becomes that little bit easier, and you can gain that momentum and carry carry it forward. And my third takeaway is his habit called kiss the wave. And we talked about this a little bit in a couple of other videos. This idea of, when you're facing the different obstacles and challenges that come into your life, the idea of asking that question, what have you come to teach me? And as we talked about recently in another video, where's your locus of control? What's inside my control? What's outside of my control? And the things that are outside of my control, you're asking that question. You're kissing the wave going, what have you come to teach me? How do I become more anti-fragile through this? How do I become stronger, grow in strength, grow in the skills, gifts, and talents that God's given me? When we go through something, maybe our brave actually becomes someone's blessing. Our ability to take a step forward into what God wants us to do through something challenging, maybe that becomes a blessing to someone else because they're able to see what God is doing in and through your life. So as you're facing the different challenges and ups and downs of life that we all experiencing, are you able to take those and allow them to strengthen you, allow them to actually build you up into the person that God wants you to be? Kiss the wave. Ask the question, what have you come to teach me? Grow in strength as the different challenges and opportunities of life come across your path. So Mark has this great line right in the middle of the book where he says, my self-confidence is subpar, but my holy confidence is off the charts. And he says, if I show up doing what I'm supposed to do consistently on a daily basis, if I show up, then God's going to show up and show off. Which brings us back to that question of, well, what does that mean to show up? It's that question of, well, can I do it for a day? Can you do it for a day? Whatever it is that you're trying to get started, can you do it for a day? Can you tackle it one time? So I want to encourage you to do that. Look at what it is that you're trying to add or eliminate in your life. Can you stop doing this for a day, or could you start doing this for a day? Absolutely, I know that you can. I hope you have an absolutely blessed rest of your day, and I look forward to sharing with you again next week.